Welcome back to the channel, friends. If you've been here before, you know I've been weaving together these strange, fantasy-inspired histories. Stories that feel like they could have been tucked away in forgotten chronicles, or whispered around firesides when people thought no one was listening. If you're new, I'm really glad you stumbled here. I'm building this channel one story at a time, and honestly, I'd love your help in shaping it. Here's the thing. I'm still figuring out if these episodes should have one long story or a couple of shorter ones stitched together. Tonight, we're doing just one, but I'd love to know what you prefer. Drop a comment and tell me more stories per episode or longer single tales. That feedback really helps me decide where to take this channel next. And as always, after the story ends, you'll hear the soft crackle of fire, a sound I've made sure is rich, deep and soothing, the kind that makes you feel like the logs are glowing right next to you. So once the monsters have been fought and the tail winds down, you'll have that warmth to drift off with. Tonight's story is a dark one. It takes us to the roaring seas of the north, to a time when the sagas whispered of a beast so vast it could coil around the world. The Leviathan. Sailors swore they felt its movements in the tides, its heartbeat in the pull of the moon. And yet, there was once, if the legends are to be believed, a single Viking who dared not only to face the Leviathan, but to tame it. This is the tale of Hrolld Stormsworn, the Viking who bound a monster. The year was 876, a time when the Northmen prowled the seas like wolves on the hunt. Hrolld had been a raider once, but by then he was already something more. A warrior turned wanderer, marked by a curse he rarely spoke of. His longship, Frostbrand, had earned its name because no matter how far south they sailed, the wood never lost its icy sheen, as though kissed by winter itself. Some whispered that the ship was bound to Hrolld's fate, for he carried something unnatural within him, lightning scars carved into his flesh after surviving a storm that should have killed him. The men who followed him believed the thunder chose him that night, that Thor himself had marked him. But Hrolld never spoke of gods. He only spoke of the sea and the one enemy no Viking had ever conquered, the great beast beneath the waves. It began with disappearances. Longships swallowed without wreckage, villages on the coast of Norway dragged screaming into the water. At first, people blamed raiders, but the survivors told a different tale. They spoke of waves that rose higher than mountains, of a shadow that moved beneath the surface, blotting out the stars. A single eye, like a burning forge, breaking the water before vanishing again. The Jarl of Trondheim, desperate and furious at the losses, summoned warriors from across the fjords. They offered silver and glory to anyone who could slay the beast. None returned, but Hrolld, scarred by storms, haunted by whispers, claimed he did not mean to slay it. He meant to break it. When he said this, the hall went silent. Some laughed, calling him mad. Others made the sign of Thor, fearing he spoke blasphemy. But Hrolld stood unmoved, his gaze as cold as the sea in winter. He claimed that the Leviathan was no beast at all, but a force, something tied to the fate of men, something that could be bent, but never destroyed. And so he gathered a crew of the fearless and the desperate. Among them was Skadi the Shield Maiden, who wielded a blade said to drink seawater without rusting. Eric One Eye, a skald who claimed to have seen the beast in a vision and lived to tell it. And Bjorn Ironhand, whose fists were stronger than most men's axes. They were not saints, nor heroes, but each had lost something to the sea, and each wanted vengeance or redemption, or both. Their journey took them north, beyond the fjords, past the isles where no fire burned, into the seas where even ravens turned back. The nights grew longer, the winds more bitter, and with each passing day, the crew felt something watching them. Hrold himself began to dream of waves as tall as mountains, of a serpent vast enough to coil around his ship 3 times over, its breath steaming the sky. One night, when the moon was red as blood, the sea rose without warning. The longship tilted, the crew screaming as water poured over the sides. But no storm raged. The air was dead still. From the depths, a shape emerged. First a ripple, then a swell, then a shadow larger than any they had seen before. And then the eye surfaced, golden, lidless, burning with an ancient hunger. The Leviathan had come. The crew froze, every instinct screaming to flee. But Hrold did not run. He gripped the prow, raised his axe to the night sky, and shouted into the void, "Beast of the deep, I am Hrold Stormsworn. I do not fear you. By wave and thunder, I claim you." The crew stared in horror at the burning eye above the waves. But before the Leviathan surged, Hrold's mind was torn backward, pulled into the memory of the storm that had marked him. It had been years before, when he was barely more than a raider seeking plunder on the Irish coast. His ship had been swift, his crew hungry for silver, but the sea had other plans. A storm rose with no warning, the sky boiling black. The wind screamed like 1,000 voices, and lightning split the heavens in jagged scars of white. Men prayed, cursed, and clung to oars, but the sea swallowed one ship after another until only Hrold's remained. He remembered standing at the prow, refusing to kneel. And then the lightning came for him. A fork of pure fire struck the mast, ran down the wood, and leapt into his flesh. It should have killed him instantly, burned him to ash like the others. Instead, when his crew dared to look, they saw him standing, smoke rising from his skin, his eyes white with light. His chest bore 3 jagged scars, etched like runes, that glowed faintly when storms gathered. They whispered then that he had been chosen by Thor. But in the years that followed, Hrold never accepted that tale. If a god had marked him, why had his family perished in the same storm, dragged into the depths while he lived? No, Hrold believed it was not Thor who chose him, but the sea itself. A force older, more merciless. A force that now stared back at him through the eye of the Leviathan. The memory shattered with the sound of wood creaking, the ship straining as if some unseen hand pressed down upon it. The crew scrambled to arms, shouting prayers. But Hrold lifted his axe high, the scars on his chest flaring faintly in the red moonlight. "Do you feel it?" he growled to his men. "This beast is not a creature. It is the storm that lives forever, and storms can be broken." Yet even as he said it, another memory clawed its way into him. He saw again the old seeress at Uppsala, a woman blind in both eyes but sharp of tongue, who had taken his hand years ago after the storm. Her words echoed as if spoken now. "You are not marked for glory, Stormsworn. You are marked for binding. The sea does not spare men without cost. When the deep comes to claim you, you will not slay it. You will join with it, or be torn apart." He had never told anyone those words, not even Eric One-Eye, who had pressed him for the truth of his scars. But now, as the Leviathan's shadow stretched across the moonlit sea, Hrold felt The prophecy's weight settled like iron around his shoulders. The beast began to rise higher, water cascading off its scales like waterfalls, its sheer size dwarfing the longship. Its breath steamed, hot as a forge, filling the night air with a stench of iron and salt. The men faltered. Even Skadi the Shield Maiden, unflinching in battle, tightened her grip until her knuckles whitened. "Row!" one of the oarsmen screamed. "We must flee!" But Hrold slammed the butt of his axe into the deck. "No. There is no fleeing from the sea. If we turn, we die screaming in the waves. If we face it," he pointed the axe toward the eye blazing above them, "we might live to sing." The Leviathan loosed a sound then, a deep, resonant bellow that seemed less a roar than the grinding of continents beneath the sea. The men covered their ears, but Hrold stood firm, his scars burning like coals, as though answering the sound with their own thunder. Lightning cracked across the sky, a storm blooming from nothing. The air thickened, wind howling, rain lashing down in sheets. And Hrold remembered, for the briefest instant, standing in that first storm, with his ship in ruins, and lightning carving his body open. This time, he thought, I will not be struck down. This time I will strike back. The Leviathan's massive head began to lower, jaws opening to reveal teeth like pillars of bone. The sea pulled with it, a tide dragging the ship toward the abyss of its maw. The crew braced themselves, some screaming, some praying, all certain death had come. But Hrold raised his axe once more and shouted into the storm, not to his men, but to the beast itself. "I know you. I've carried your mark for years. If you mean to take me, then take me whole. But if you will not, then bow to me." The storm answered with another strike of lightning, this time splitting the sea itself in blinding light. The Leviathan paused, as though recognizing the scarred mortal who dared defy it. And in that pause, the battle truly began. The Leviathan's head plunged down, jaws yawning wide enough to swallow the longship whole. The men screamed, some dropping oars, others lifting spears that looked like twigs compared to the Titan's teeth. "Shields! Raise shields!" roared Eric One-Eye. Though his voice cracked with fear, wood clattered as the warriors scrambled, lifting their painted shields to form a crude wall. But when the first jet of water burst from the beast's throat, a geyser, hot and foul as steam from a boiling spring, the shield wall shattered like children's toys. Men were thrown across the deck, their cries snatched by the roaring storm. Hrold planted his boots against the slick planks, axe in hand. The runes carved by lightning across his chest burned hotter now, every nerve alive with stormfire. The beast's eye loomed just above him, a golden orb streaked with black veins, larger than a shield, staring into him as if measuring his worth. "Come then," Hrold snarled, voice hoarse. "See what your mark has made of me." The Leviathan struck. Its jaw snapped down, shattering the prow of the ship. Men leapt clear as wood splintered like bone. Eric hurled a spear into its mouth. The weapon vanished between teeth, with no effect. Skadi drove her sword into the roof of its maw as it passed, only for the blade to glance off scale and stone-hard flesh. The ship rocked violently, water flooding the deck. The men scrambled for balance, clinging to ropes and oars, their faces pale in the lightning's glare. Some wept, others howled oaths, but all knew this was no earthly fight. Hrold raised his axe and charged. The planks trembled under his boots as he vaulted the shattered prow, leaping onto the beast's snout. Rain lashed his face, the storm shrieking so loudly He could not hear the crew's cries behind him. His scars blazed, casting faint light even in the black storm, as though the sea itself had set him aflame. He brought the axe down with both hands, aiming for the eye. The Leviathan jerked at the last instant. The blade crashed against its scale, sparks leaping like struck flint, and Hrold was thrown sprawling across the beast's wet hide. His fingers clawed desperately at ridges of bone to keep from sliding into the abyssal sea below. The monster twisted, trying to dislodge him, while his body surged upward, raising the longship like a toy on its back. Men screamed as water poured over the deck. "Hrold!" Eric bellowed. He and Skadi, defiant even now, hurled ropes. One lashed around Hrold's arm just as he began to slip. He seized it, his shoulders nearly torn from their sockets as the beast bucked. The storm answered again, lightning lashing the sea in jagged bolts. Hrold felt the power thrumming in his scars, a rhythm that pulsed with the monster's every breath. He realized then, he was not merely marked by storm, but tied to it, sharing the Leviathan's heartbeat. "Bind it!" he roared to his men. "Ropes, harpoons, hold it down." Madness or courage he could not say, but the crew obeyed. They hurled harpoons into its hide, ropes straining as the beast thrashed. Dozens snapped at once, men pulled screaming into the sea, but others held. The Leviathan writhed, its body a mountain in motion, but for the first time it did not surge free. And then the eye met his again. The storm went silent in Hrold's mind, though all around the wind screamed. The eye burned into him, and he felt words without sound. Storm sworn, "You are mine. Do not bind me. Become me." Hrold shook his head violently, axe still in hand. "No," he snarled through gritted teeth. "I am not yours. You are mine." He raised the axe again, ready to drive it into the glowing eye, but his hand trembled. The prophecy of the seeress returned, cold as the grave. You will not slay it. You will join with it. For a heartbeat, he hesitated. Lightning flickered around him, searing the night as though the gods themselves waited to see his choice. Behind him, his crew screamed as the ropes strained, snapping one by one, men dying to keep the beast tethered. Eric bled from a gash across his face, but still clung to a line. Skadi's arms shook with the weight of another harpoon, blood running from her palms. Hrold knew then, this was not only his fight. If he faltered, they would all die. He roared, raising the axe with both hands and brought it crashing toward the eye. The axe struck. Steel split scale, not fully, not clean, but enough. A crack spidered across the Leviathan's eye, black blood hissing as it spilled into the rain. The monster shrieked, the sound deeper than thunder, so vast that the sea itself quivered. Men clutched their ears, some bleeding from them, others toppling into the waves like rag dolls. Hrold's arms trembled from the impact. The axe had not shattered, but his bones sang with pain. He ripped it free, black ichor splattering across his chest, burning where it touched his skin. The scars of stormfire flared in answer, as though the sea's venom and sky's flame battled across his flesh. The Leviathan thrashed. The longship cracked apart, ribs splintering as men were hurled into the churning abyss. A mast went snapping into the night, smashing two warriors to pulp before vanishing beneath the waves. The ropes, still clinging to the beast, stretched taut and tore loose, flinging their holders screaming into the void. "Hold!" Eric bellowed, blood streaming down his temple, teeth bared like a wolf's. He drove another harpoon deep, the rope tearing his palms raw as he braced his body against the deck. Skadi leapt forward, climbing the slick monster's hide to stand near Rold. Lightning lit her face, pale, feral, streaked with blood and salt. "Strike again!" she shouted, sword in hand, though the storm stole half her words. The eye swiveled toward them, burning with rage. It opened its maw and exhaled a torrent of steaming, brine-thick water. The blast tore half the crew from the deck, their cries lost instantly. The longship sagged, shattered planks drifting away like bones stripped from a corpse. Hrold lifted the axe again. His scars burned hotter, lightning striking in rhythm with his pulse. He felt the storm within him now, not outside, not above, but flowing through his veins. He drew in its power, each breath tasting of ash and sea salt, and raised the weapon high. "By storm, by steel, by blood!" he roared. The axe plunged once more into the wounded eye. This time, it sank deeper, cracking vitreous stone, sending a gush of black blood across the beast's snout. The Leviathan screamed again, rolling its vast body, sending waves that swallowed the last remnants of the longship. Men vanished beneath the water. Eric clung to a floating spar, still roaring curses at the beast. Skadi drove her sword again into the fissure Hrold had made, bracing herself against the slick flesh, adding her strength to his fury. The Leviathan thrashed so violently that the sea itself seemed to rise and fall in mountains. Lightning danced upon the water, drawn to Hrold's scars as though he were a living beacon. His axe blazed with stormfire, each strike echoing like a hammer against the forge of the gods. Then the monster dove. The world inverted as Hrold, Skadi, and half the crew were dragged down with it, ropes and weapons still embedded in its flesh. The sea closed overhead like a tomb. Pressure crushed their lungs, darkness swallowing lightning until only faint glimmers of stormfire lit the abyss. Hrold's chest burned. His mind screamed that this was death, that no man could breathe in the cold gut of the world. Yet the scars upon him pulsed. Once, twice, and suddenly he felt the water not as suffocation but as air. His chest filled, not with drowning brine, but with the storm itself. He opened his eyes in the depths. Around him men were already limp, bubbles rising from their mouths. Skadi still kicked, furiously, sword lodged in the beast's flesh, her face contorted with fury. Eric, too far, was sinking with eyes glazed. The Leviathan twisted, its colossal body coiling in the blackness. Its eye, cracked and bleeding, glared with hatred and recognition. "Stormsworn," it spoke again in his mind. "You wound yourself when you wound me. Choose, fight me, or join me. There is no victory otherwise." Hrold bared his teeth, bubbles streaming from his mouth. The axe felt fused to his hands, alive with lightning, a weapon forged of storm and defiance. "Then I fight," he growled, voice carrying through no air past his lips. He struck again. The blow drove the axe deeper into the cracked eye, splitting it further, spilling a flood of black ichor into the water. The Leviathan writhed, currents tearing warriors to pieces against its scales, crushing bones like driftwood. Skadi clung still, blade biting deeper, even as blood poured from her ears and nose from the pressure. The storm above answered their battle. Bolts struck the sea in a relentless barrage, illuminating the abyss in bursts of white fire. Hrold's body shone like a beacon, every scar a lightning rod, his eyes filled with crackling blue light. And then the beast stilled. For one terrible heartbeat, it ceased thrashing, its gaze fixed wholly upon him. Not rage, not hatred now, but something older, deeper, an acknowledgement. "Stormsworn," it whispered once more. "We are one storm. break me, and you break yourself." Hrod lifted the axe for another strike. His men were nearly gone, the ship broken, the sea red with blood, and black with a monster's ichor. Skadi clung by will alone. Eric had vanished. Lightning tore the ocean above into white fire. There was no room for hesitation. He roared, both man and storm, and brought the axe down once more upon the eye of the Leviathan. The axe came down, splitting the cracked eye like glass. A shudder ripped through the Leviathan's body, so vast that the sea itself seemed to stop. For a heartbeat there was no storm, no thunder, no cries of men, only silence, as if the world held its breath. Then the monster wailed. The sound was not only heard, but felt, vibrating through bone and blood, rattling Hrod's teeth until he thought his skull would split. Its body twisted, coils shaking the depths, tearing the last remnants of the longship into splinters. The waves surged outward in all directions, tsunamis racing across unseen shores. The eye shattered completely. Black ichor flooded into the water, clouding the abyss like a night sky. Yet as it poured, lightning struck again and again above, each bolt sinking into Hrod's scars, filling him with a fire too vast for mortal flesh. The Leviathan's voice thundered in his skull, one last time. Storm sworn, "You are mine, and I am yours." And then its titanic body fell still. The currents eased, the sea quieted, the abyss lay hushed. But Hrod remained. His chest rose and fell, though he drew no breath, his axe glowing faintly with lightning that would not fade. Skadi drifted nearby, eyes wide, her sword still lodged in the beast's hide. She reached for him, hand trembling, but recoiled as she saw the storm blazing beneath his skin. He was no longer only Hrod. The Leviathan's power, its storm, its blood, its endless fury, lived in him now. He felt the sea in his veins, the storm in his marrow, the weight of an eternal tide pressing against his soul. He had not slain the monster, he had become it. When he kicked upward, the sea parted before him. The storm carried him, lifting him from the depths, like a child from a cradle. Skadi followed in his wake, gasping as she broke the surface, clutching to driftwood. Around them floated only wreckage. No other men, no ship, no hope. Lightning split the heavens, illuminating Hrod as he rose upon a cresting wave. To Skadi's eyes, he was a god, hair wild, scars blazing, axe burning with the fire of the storm. She whispered, voice hoarse, "What are you?" Hrod looked down at his own hands, still trembling with the power of the beast. The storm's voice echoed within him. Not cruel, not kind, but eternal. He lifted the axe high, and lightning answered, striking its blade in a blinding flash. "I am Storm," he said simply, his voice carrying across the endless sea. And with that, the waves bore him away, deeper into the horizon where man could not follow. Some say he became a terror, haunting coasts with storms and tempests. Others say he became a guardian, unleashing fury only upon those who defied the old gods. Skalds sang of him for generations, half man, half monster, the Viking who tamed the Leviathan by becoming it. But Skadi, who survived, told a different tale, that Hrod had not been devoured, nor broken, nor lost. He had chosen. He had met fate as both man and storm, and carved a new path where prophecy ended. And so the Leviathan lived on, not in the abyss, but in the heart of a storm-scarred warrior who could never again set foot on mortal shore.